Hey everybody, welcome back to Sounds Like a Drum, Kane's independent media production. Today we're talking about one of our favorite subjects, little DIY hacks you could do to your kit on the fly, at home, fixing little problems that we all run into. There's all kinds of little ways that you can take care of your kit with things you might find around your house, and every time we stumble on some new ones or any time that we remember one that we forgot, it's always fun to share it with everyone on this channel. And we have 4 today that we've actually been using fairly recently, one of which actually I got introduced to in a rehearsal studio, which made me laugh the first time I saw it, and it's since become a really important thing to me. First up, this is more of an aesthetic thing, but something that we've come to do here because we do so much filming and we go through so many drum heads and sticks and different things like that. And we're always trying to kind of keep things looking nice and looking fresh and feeling good for the cameras and for everyone out there. And this is one that was brand new to me, little secret sauce thing that Ben discovered. It's something called Magic Eraser. What we're talking about here is cleaning your drum heads. Now, let's make sure we are clear. Cleaning drum heads is not the same as replacing them if they're shot. This is for making them look new, which is nice for the cameras. It can be nice just for aesthetic things if you're on a gig that's getting filmed, different things like that, or if you just like the look of a clean head. And there's lots of products out there. You can do lots of different things with it. Magic Eraser is the one that for us here is the fastest, easiest, reusable, gets the job done. In hand, this product looks basically like a sponge that you might clean your dishes with, but it's actually designed for this very purpose. What you do with it is just get it lightly damp and then scrub the surface gently that you want to clean, and it miraculously takes off scuffs, marks, little things like that. It's great for the walls in your apartment. It's great for lots of things. We primarily use it on coated heads where against that bright kind of white color you can see stick marks and you can see dirt and the muck from brushes and things like that. An added kind of bonus for this is that it gives you a real sense of how damaged your head actually is, because if you're actually able to rub off what you're seeing, then you really are just dealing with cosmetic issues on the head and not a deeper problem. So far, we haven't run into anything on any of our coated heads that this couldn't get off very, very quickly. Use it all the time, and each one of them has a pretty long life too, so you're going to be able to clean a ton of heads with it before you need to break out a new one. Hack number 2, something I've been doing for a long time because I am plagued for some reason with this issue, and it is basically playing your pedal off of your bass drum. The pedal is sliding off of the hoop, even if it's tensioned really tightly. I don't want to tension it too tightly because I don't want to damage the wood hoop on the drum. Most of them are wood, some of them are metal, but for wood ones in particular, you see vintage ones that are cracked and things like that, and it's terrible. For the longest time, I was wrapping that area with maybe gaff tape or using felt or something like that, until I discovered one day that I could use grip tape from a skateboard to do this. I've since upgraded a little bit, but I started with just using scrap grip tape from skateboards because it's grippy on one side, adhesive on the other, and it's meant to be removable because you replace that on a skateboard after a certain amount of life oftentimes. There's lots of brands for this kind of thing, and you can go that route. I chose today to go with my current favorite, which is a 3M product, and it's basically for non-slick around swimming pools. They also make it for like regular steps and things like that, but the swimming pool one is particularly nice because it doesn't actually have any grit in it. It's more of like a sort of scratchy resin, but there's no paper on the bottom to tear or anything like that, and it's a little bit thicker, so you can kind of dial in the pressure onto it a little bit harder and not worry about it either sliding off or getting into your hoop at all. The single sheets look about like this. They're about 8 inches long and a couple of inches wide, and they're really easy to just cut up with a pair of scissors into whatever shape you might need, maybe wider along the length for underneath, and then maybe something narrower for where the top of the clamp goes down. This drum actually arrived to me with this very product on it already, which is what sent me to the hardware store to look for it. I've also discovered with this particular product that it's really easy to take it off, and it doesn't seem to leave any residue, but because it's meant for non-slip, it's very, very strong and sticky laterally, which is what we need. need to keep the pedal from coming off. But in terms of being able to peel it off, it's actually really easy to take off. So you're not going to get into a situation where there's going to be residue on the hoop, or conversely where it's going to end up sliding off after a while. The big thing is to make sure that the area is clean and dry before you put it on. A lot of times dust and stick bits and things like that can kind of gather down there because it's below where you're playing. So just make sure you get in there with a rag or something and just make sure that there's no stuff on there that's going to make it so that the adhesive can't really stick onto the hoop. And lastly, a pack of these has 6 of them in it. So for $8 or whatever, you can go in on it with your friends and each keep a couple, and it's barely even an investment. On to door number 3. This is an interesting problem that's actually come up a bunch recently as I've been replacing snare stands because my old ones are starting to get a little bit worn out. And what it boils down to, as you can see, we have a different snare drum here, is that not all snare stands will gather the basket up close enough to hold a small snare or a practice pad or things that are maybe under, say, like a 13-inch diameter. This happens to be a 12 that's in front of me now. What happens essentially is that you run out of threading underneath when you're spinning the wheel beneath to bring the claws together to hold whatever it is you want to put on the stand. And this is kind of a delightful hack that is kind of all around, especially if you're in a recording studio or if you just happen to have a mic stand around. These little guys. Now, if you're not familiar with what this is, it's a little clasp that comes on most any mic stand that you would buy from the store, and it's meant to hold the cable against the stand so that you don't have cables hanging all over the place, and they're just sort of popped on with pressure and they stay put. It's the perfect diameter, so far with all the stands that we've tried it on, to basically clip onto the threading and buy you a little bit more distance underneath as far as what you can lift up. It's basically almost like a gasket or something like that that raises up whatever you're pushing so that the claws end up closer together and are able to hold on to smaller items. And now the last one. This is the one I mentioned in the first place that I saw in a practice space a couple of years ago. And initially I was like, oh boy, that's really frustrating. And then I realized, actually, this is extremely useful. It is called a hose clamp. And this is a common thing you can find in any hardware store, plumbing store, places like that. What this basically is for us is a universal kind of memory lock, or whatever you'd like to call it, that a lot of stands come with. A lot of us lose them or set them aside or don't use them because they're a little bit of a hassle, until that day where you have some part of some stand that won't stay put vertically. For me, it tends to be the hi-hat stand that becomes this issue because there's so much downward pressure on it over the years. We end up having to cinch it down really tight to maintain the height of the cymbals. After a while, those things can wear out. If you're a person who heads to rehearsal studios or uses backline kits much, that's where it starts to be a huge problem. A lot of the times things are stripped out and you get there and you need to use that stand and it is not working for you. Grab a couple of these. They are ridiculously cheap. I think it was a couple of dollars. Put them in your bag just in case you have a struggle with a cymbal stand, a hi-hat stand, basically anything that you need something on there to hold it in place. A small enough one will even work on a floor tom leg if you ever have your bracket break. And the big thing to think about with these too is they come in a lot of sizes, so it's important to both think about like the size range you might need to be able to cinch them down to, and also making sure that they're big enough to get onto the largest thing that you might need to use it for before you start to cinch it down. There's a lot more wiggle room making it smaller than going the other way, which is to say they are limited at how big one can get that you're buying. In the case of the practice space that I was in, I was using someone else's drum set. I was being very kind, using it nicely. They happened to be extremely tall, and they had hose clamped the heights of everything on the whole kit so that they wouldn't have people coming in there and adjusting it, which again, initially, I'm sitting super low, the cymbals are super high, and I was like, oh man, this is the worst. And then I thought about it and was like, well, that's a wise decision on his part, make sure that everything stays where it is. But on the other hand, it's also an incredible safety measure for the future, just for gigs, The one big caveat with these that we have to keep in mind, because so much of the drum set is adjustable with a drum key, these are not adjustable with a drum key. They're just from the hardware store. So the ones I got the other day take a flathead screwdriver. You can also just use like a little crescent wrench or something like that to put them on. So make sure you have something like that in your bag. I always have a screwdriver with me. I find I need those more than like a wrench, but anytime you have something that you're probably going to use on the gig that doesn't take a drum key, make sure you have that tool with you at all times. All these things we're talking about today are kind of inexpensive DIY things to facilitate getting through the gig, facilitate taking care of your drum, especially in the case of attaching the bass drum on there, not wrecking the hoop, and also making sure your pedal doesn't come off. There are lots of options for all of these issues. You can buy new memory locks. You can buy special products to keep your bass drum pedal on there. We love DIY stuff here, both because it gets you into a relationship with your instrument, and also a lot of times it's just less expensive, which all of us need less expensive all of the time. Having said that, we're super curious here about anything you may use to solve these problems that differs from what we've found. There's always more to learn. There's always more options out there, and anything that works for you, fantastic. All right, that about wraps it up for today. Thanks for checking out all these little tips with us today. We had a blast with all of this and had super fun playing with all this stuff too. Please like, comment, and subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you hear about all of our new videos. We are still coming up with all kinds of stuff every week, particularly over on the Patreon. If you haven't checked that out yet, Cymbal series is over there, anecdotes, behind the scenes, extra playing footage, all kinds of stuff like that. Please check it out. Follow the link below. See if there's a tier that works for you. Keep us going here. It's really keeping us alive and allowing us to continue to do this. And finally, as I kind of said before, tell me about hacks for things like this, whether it's at home, on the gig, on tour, backline kits, rehearsal space, whatever it is, anything that we can do to make sure that we can enjoy playing when we finally get to these days, it's the best.